Hello and welcome back to Alice Talks Football and welcome back to a massive Manchester United news, transfer news, takeover news show. We're going to do the show live because there's lots and lots to get through. Ten Hag speaks about Donny van de Beek, why he wasn't the same player he was at Ajax, why he had to let Donny van de Beek go. Also reports coming out about INEOS' major changes that they want to make. INEOS, why is someone starting drilling the minute I go live? Are they taking... I don't know if you can hear that, but it's just drilling background noise. So that's been quiet for 2 hours. All of a sudden, everyone's being loud. Oh, sorry if that picks up. So INEOS want to make some major changes, sort of bring Sir Alex Ferguson and Gill more into the loop. We've got the short list of people that INEOS are looking at to be for sporting director roles and other roles at Manchester United, Ashworth, Mitchell, but there are other names on that list. We're going to talk about the other names on the list, who they are, what they add. We'll talk about Todibo. Manchester United still in for Todibo. They've got a plan to get Todibo, Nice, Todibo, Ratcliffe. The link's there. Ratcliffe's going to make sure that Todibo is saved for Manchester United. We will talk about that. Some transfer news, some comments that Ten Hag's made in this presser, and more. So please do hit that like button if you have not already. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new as well. Has the stream started? Well, if the stream has started, you'll be hearing me saying has the stream started. So do put in the chat if everything is okay with the stream as well. But let's get right into the news. Please do interact in the live chat. But I want to talk about some of the things that were said on Donny van de Beek. And also, sort of Ten Hag was asked if Man United had sort of ruined Donny van de Beek's career or we're a risk for players' careers. And I think Ten Hag said some interesting things. So talking about what Ten Hag said on Donny van de Beek and why Donny sort of left. Because there was always this feeling, Ten Hag coming in, Donny van de Beek's career is going to be safe. But to be honest, he didn't get many injuries under Ollie, but as soon as Ten Hag came in, he was getting the Martial injury loop. And I think that's because Donny, COVID season, he cut off half a season with Ajax, didn't play for Man United for like 2 full seasons. I think by the time he actually got back into United and started playing, because he hadn't played in so long, he was just picking up all these injuries. And I think that was why he never really got the run under Ten Hag, because it's a period where Eriksen was injured, a lot of players were injured, and Donny had played like 3 games in a row and had a really good 90 minutes, and then he got injured. But Ten Hag did say on Donny, from the moment I came here at Man United, he wasn't the player I had at Ajax because he was injured, and so many times he was unavailable. So Ten Hag said, look, this isn't the Donny I had at Ajax. This guy was injured, he was unavailable, just the lack of minutes in him. Then he probably struggled for a long time with recovering from that injury, so I think that is probably the main reason he wasn't playing. So Ten Hag said the injuries he had, he struggled from, that was the main reason he wasn't playing. Obviously, he missed 6 months of last season through injury, where I don't know if he'd have played a lot, but he would have definitely got a fair amount of minutes because McTominay was injured last season, Eriksen was injured last season, Casemiro kept getting suspensions, and we were literally having Sabitzer, Bruno and Fred midfield 3 for the majority of games to sort of get by as well. So that was said. Hi, you're live from Ireland. Big up everybody watching. Do let me know in the chat where you're watching. And it was also said by Ten Hag, then we decided the loan in the summer for Donny was the best option, but nothing came of that. Then his opportunities were few because we had so many appointments and agreements with players, and there was conflict in those positions. The competition was high. So basically what's being said is the reason that Donny didn't go out on loan in the summer was because of competition. He wasn't guaranteed minutes or something, because there was a report that Donny obviously wanted to go to one club, but then they didn't go through with the deal, and then Donny went back to another club and they said no, and then Donny stayed in the summer. I remember Ten Hag saying the Arsenal game in September, he was saying Donny's not in the squad, I've picked Dango and Mesri to be in the squad ahead of Donny because Donny's head's not at United. He's very frustrated, he didn't get the move. So we thought, is Donny actually stayed at United for the money because no one was going to pay his wages? But it turns out Donny didn't stay at United for the money. He stayed at United because all the loan deals he was talking about just couldn't offer him the minutes, and Donny wanted to make sure that he was going for a place where he was going to ideally get minutes. Obviously, every sort of position has competition, every sort of role, like every club will have some level of competition, but he wanted to know that they sort of planned for him to be the starting sort of number 8 in that kind of role as well. I almost do think that Donny would have suited Casemiro's 2-8 role plan. I think he's more of an 8 than McTominay. He's more of a natural 8 than Eriksen, but I think it's just too late to even try that now. But I would have liked to see that. So the question was, and this was actually raised in the press conference, did United ruin Donny? Because I think Ollie bringing Donny in and never playing him because he was a board signing and not an Ollie signing did a lot to knock Donny's confidence. I think that didn't help because when he did play, he got injured because he was so out of it. I don't think Donny was super impressive in the minutes he got. I remember Donny having this cameo versus Watford in the 8 role, not the 10 role, because I always thought he was poor in the 10 role. But when he played in the 8 role and Bruno was in the 10 role, Donny was always impressive. And Donny had these cameos where he showed that he could do more than McTominay and Fred, but he just didn't maybe have the physicality for the Premier League. It was more that he could do more on the ball, may look better in possession, but Ollie worried about the physicality. He just maybe wasn't a Premier League player and wasn't as impressive in those minutes. I remember the cameo versus Newcastle, the cameo versus Watford. He showed moments where I just wanted to see him more, and I feel like he never got the chances. But ultimately, he wasn't good enough in the limited chances he got to really warrant playing loads. So I think to an extent United probably did ruin him and ruin his confidence, but I think it just comes down from incompetence from the board. Eric Ten Hag was actually asked about, do Man United sort of ruin careers? Should players risk their career and join Manchester United? Eric Ten Hag was actually asked about this question, and Ten Hag said this: that is always on the players and what kind of confidence you have. Your capabilities, I can tell you one thing, and that is that the Premier League is tough, and at Manchester United it's tough to play here because in every other team it is easier to play there because there is less pressure. It's so high, you have to deal with that. So Ten Hag's basically saying it's not about Man United ruining careers, it's about players being able to deal with the pressure. You get more pressure at Man United than you do at Liverpool and Arsenal. Liverpool, Arsenal, massive clubs. He's saying when you're at Man United, you get a new level of pressure. Like, look at the amount of stick Rasmus Højlund was getting, despite being Champions League top goal scorer, even though he's 20 and he was never meant to be United's main striker. Look how much stick he was getting because he wasn't scoring goals, even though everyone knew he had no service. Everyone knew that he was doing a lot. People were going in on him. You look at sort of the treatment of Pochettino, the treatment of Arteta, who finished 8th twice, compared to the treatment of Ten Hag that finished 3rd and is now having a bad season. You will be under the media stick a lot more at United. You will be sort of getting more criticism at United as well. Donny just looks like a little lost boy. I really, really hope that Donny van de Beek goes and smashes it on loan. What I want is Donny van de Beek to go to Frankfurt, play regularly and be brilliant as well. He should have definitely been given more game time. I think Ollie did ruin him to an extent. And Donny played well when he was loaned out. So the problem is that United, not with him. I don't think he was very convincing at Everton. He got injured, to be honest. I feel sorry for Donny because a bit of it is on him, a bit of it is on his injuries, but a lot of it was on Manchester United and the poor mismanagement there. And I really, really hope that Donny goes and smashes it on loan at Frankfurt because he's just not played enough, and I do think he's more suited to the Bundesliga, and hopefully he will do quite well out there in the Bundesliga. But let's move on to our next story because we've got loads and loads of information to get through, lots and lots to get through, and I want to talk about INEOS's plans, things that they could be looking to do at Manchester United. Now, The Athletic came out with a very, very good report, and The Athletic have always spot on. I highly recommend buying The Athletic. It's always good for United information. And they said that Brailsford has identified the need for a sporting director and a recruitment specialist at United. So it's not just going to be like one person coming in, it's two. And that could be Dan Ashworth and Paul Mitchell with the number one targets, but we're looking at Andrea Berta, we're looking at Julian Ward, and we're looking at Dougie Freedman of Crystal Palace that we've been linked to a lot. So who are these people that Manchester United have sort of continuously been linked with? Well, the Devil's DNA did a good summary here, and I think this can kind of give you a summary of who these are that Manchester United are looking at. So the sporting director options is Dan Ashworth, who's the first choice, I believe, who's been at Newcastle, Brighton, England, and he has been at West Brom. The second option is Andrea Berta, that's done a very good job at Atletico Madrid. He's currently there now. Genoa and Parma did a very good job at Genoa. I don't know anything about what he did at Parma. I would have to do some research on that if we get linked to him more. The options for Manchester United head of recruitment is Paul Mitchell, that's been at Monaco, RB Leipzig, Tottenham, and before Tottenham he was at Southampton. Julian Ward, who was at Liverpool, but I'm not the biggest fan of him. I like Michael Edwards, but I don't think Julian Ward was as good. It wasn't that good for Liverpool. And then, of course, Dougie Freedman of Crystal Palace, who, again, you look at the Elises, you look at Eze's. Obviously, it's very different recruiting for Crystal Palace compared to United because you're looking at a different kind of a style and player. But he's done a phenomenal job in his recruitment as well. And this is sort of the options that United are personally looking at. I think Dan Ashworth would be the best for sporting directors. Paul Mitchell would be the best for head of recruitment options. And I think most people would agree on that. Guys, let's see if we can hit 100 likes. We've got 250 people watching right now. So please do hit that like button if you have not already. It really, really helps out the channel as well. United has only brought random players over the years. None of the managers get their first choice. It's just been poor recruitment. I agree. And that's why INEOS are looking to bring in the likes of Dan Ashworth, Paul Mitchell, trying to get the recruitment right as well. I think that's why United are massively trying to change that, which is super, super important. The most important thing INEOS can do is really just change the structure of the club, how we operate, who's choosing who we sign, who's choosing this, who's choosing that, because that is where Manchester United are a massive, massive mess. Continuing on into the news, it was said David Gill became closer to Manchester United when Ed Woodward left and is expected to be tapped into by the coming INEOS regime. It was said by Laurie Whitwell that Brailsford also feels Sir Alex Ferguson was way ahead of the curve and very innovative. I can never say that word. And that tapping into his wisdom now will be important not for cutting and pasting old practices, but for understanding the landscape of the club currently and applying guiding principles to reach solutions. So what does this mean? There's this suggestion in the media that one of the things that the suggestion in the media that Sir Alex Ferguson and Gill could be back for United return. And obviously Sir Alex isn't going to return to management and Gill isn't going to return to being the sporting director. But there's a sense that INEOS want to involve Sir Alex Ferguson and David Gill to set principles, a way of playing. They want to establish a Man United personality, a Manchester United mentality. INEOS want to discover the Man United way. That's sort of the way INEOS are seeing it. You know, we want to sort of talk about what's going to be the Man United way. We want to build a culture. And something that Dan Ashworth's done, and I think this is one of the main reasons that INEOS want Dan Ashworth, is England had big cultural problems. England had the big names, the Rios, I was about to say Vidic, Rios, the John Terrys, the Gerrards, the Lampards, the Rooneys, the Beckhams. But that England side was always crap because they were not a good culture. They had the players, they had the skill, but the culture around the England camp was horrific. It was players that were too big for their boots. And then the England side that went to Russia with Trippier, Dele Alli, Pickford, very young, massive drop-off from the big names we used to have at England, all of a sudden done more than all these big England players had ever done in their career in the Russia 2018 World Cup. And that was because of Dan Ashworth. Dan Ashworth came in and over a few years, he completely changed the mentality of England. He had this sort of code book. He wanted to establish an environment. He then started introducing more youth teams and saying, you know, what we want is just the size of the shirt changes. We want to instill these principles in the England youth setup, and then that should rub off on them when they get promoted to, obviously, the main England setup. And he instilled this sort of new philosophy and changed the culture. And there's the feeling that INEOS would want to bring in Sir Alex Ferguson and David Gill, who were there when Man United had this winning culture, this winning mentality, to use them as ideas of how are we going to get this winning culture, this winning mentality back in United? How are we going to create a United way, a new United way, which isn't moaning, which isn't whinging, which isn't leaking, it's being winners. And I think that's something that we massively need, because we can sign all the best players in the world. We could be the best side in the world. But if we have this team of moaning, whinging players, it's just not going to help us at all. It was said by Declan, from what positions we're looking at, who do you want, Alice? So Manchester United ahead of the summer window are looking at obviously a midfielder, someone that can play as a 6/8 hybrid that's particularly physical. Manchester United are looking at a centre-back, potentially two centre-backs depending on exits in the window. United are looking at right wingers and strikers. For right wing, I would go with either Nico Williams or Elise. Striker, I'm not sure. Part of me, someone spoke about Scamacca, and I know he flopped at West Ham, but he's been very good in Italy. But I don't know if that's too much of a risk. I'm not sure on strikers. Maybe someone says Gimenez, maybe. I think striker's the one I'd have to do some research in and look at who United want. Because realistically, we're not going to get an Oxenham, we're not going to get an Ivan Toney. But right wing, Nico Williams or Elise. Midfielder, I'd love Chouameni, never going to happen. So I'd probably go with a Weefor or Amadou Onana type midfielder. And then maybe like an understudy for Casemiro, like a Zambrano type player. Left centre back, I'd either go with Inacio or Branthwaite. Right centre back, budget wise, I'd go with Todibo. If we had all the money in the world, I would go for Diamond. But I don't think that's going to happen. There's Lenny Euro as well that looks like a good player, but I think he's actually reported to go to Liverpool. But Lenny Euro does look like a bit of a baller, but I don't think United are in for him. Continuing on, guys, please do hit that like button and, of course, subscribe down below if you're new as well. United has only brought random players in over the years. None of the managers got their first choice because of poor recruitment. Exactly. So, what has the INEOS said? What has the Athletic said on how INEOS are going to change transfers? Talking of transfers, talking of the managers not getting their transfers, talking of United's transfer structure, but also talking about Ten Hag's very, very poor recruitment. Let's talk about what's going to change, because we said this in yesterday's video. Ten Hag could be in trouble. INEOS are piling on the pressure on Ten Hag. Ten Hag could seriously be in trouble because INEOS have a way that they want to do things. INEOS want to give Ten Hag less power over things like transfers. Do you know what I mean? But Ten Hag is very reluctant to give up that power. Ten Hag doesn't want to give up power. Ten Hag wants to have a big say when it comes to transfers and things. But INEOS are thinking, well, we don't want him to choose transfers. Look at Anthony. Look at this player. Look at that player. And the Nice manager spoke about how do INEOS operate when it comes to recruitment. The Nice manager said that they operate within a framework where the sporting director leads the recruitment strategy. There's continuous dialogue and the manager is consulted, but he does not have the final say. So the Nice manager basically doesn't have the final say on transfers. Now, Ten Hag has a thing in his United contract where he can veto transfers, he can have a final say, and INEOS want to take that away. Now, why is that a problem? Why could that cause some drama that INEOS want to take this away from Ten Hag? Because Ten Hag in an interview not that long ago said that he wouldn't go to a club if they didn't give him the final say on transfers. I'm going to get the quote up for you guys and why I think that Ten Hag, this is very troubling for Ten Hag, because INEOS will not give Ten Hag that control. They will not give Ten Hag that power, because why would they be bringing in Paul Mitchell and Dan Ashworth and willing to pay what it takes to bring in Paul Mitchell and Dan Ashworth just for Ten Hag to be able to sort of veto the signings as well? And I will show you, this is what Ten Hag once said. I'm going to get this up on my screen, and I think this is very important, so just bear with me. And this is worrying for Ten Hag, I think. But this is the quote. This is a quote from Ten Hag here. Ready? With Ten Hag previously saying this: I set requirements in advance about how I want to work. If they aren't guaranteed, I won't do it. I am ultimately responsible and accountable for results. I don't want to be the sole ruler. I stand for cooperation, but control and transfers is still a condition for me. So Erik Ten Hag has said previously a year ago, he makes sure that every club he goes to, he gets control in transfers. That's a condition for him. But the way INEOS operate is that the manager doesn't get the final say. Ten Hag's veto will be gone, but Ten Hag says, I will not work that way. This is how I want to work. So will Ten Hag change the way he wants to work with INEOS and stay at United? I've just realised I've cut that out. Will Ten Hag walk? Will Ten Hag be sacked? Because ultimately there was the saying and the feeling that if Ten Hag ends the season well and doesn't get sacked, but INEOS want to do this, there's reports coming out that Ten Hag will walk. There's reports coming out that Ten Hag isn't keen on working with INEOS behind the scenes. But then everything Ten Hag has said about INEOS is positive. So you do have to take that information with a pinch of salt. But we do know that INEOS are going to restrict Ten Hag's power when it comes to transfers. Ten Hag isn't going to like that, and that's going to be the first major level of conflict, which is also maybe why INEOS have called up Graham Potter. INEOS reportedly have had conversations with Graham Potter, have called up Graham Potter as sort of a cautionary in case they need to sack Ten Hag. Now, ultimately, Ten Hag is stubborn. He doesn't like to change things. And I think with Ten Hag's stubbornness, with what we know, and considering what Ten Hag has said about, how he likes to have the final say on transfers and veto power, which is not going to be given under INEOS, it does make me feel, well, will he change that? Ten Hag's very stubborn. We complain about Ten Hag being a stubborn manager. Will he be willing to change that to work with INEOS, or does he want that control and say with transfers? If I'm Erik Ten Hag, I think, well, if it's the Glazers that are controlling transfers, I would walk, because we know what the Glazers' reputation is like. But if it's INEOS controlling transfers and bringing in Paul Mitchell and Dan Ashworth, and considering our recruitment hasn't been good enough, I'd be willing to give them the opportunity. If I'm Ten Hag, I'm thinking, well, it's not the Glazers choosing now. It's INEOS, it's Dan Ashworth, it's Paul Mitchell, it's whoever comes in choosing. So these are people I can trust. Whereas I get when he first came to United, he couldn't trust the Glazers, he couldn't trust Murta, he couldn't trust Arnold. You can trust the people that will likely be brought in. So maybe Ten Hag will be willing to say, look, you know what, I'm gonna let you have a bit of control, this and that. Hopefully that's the case, and maybe Ten Hag will be willing to do that. But you just don't know. You just don't know. And I think that is where you look at the situation, you think, well, yeah, Ten Hag could be in trouble. Ten Hag's job could be in a bit of trouble there as well. Come on, Wigan, love to see the pain. We will be talking about Manchester United Wigan at the end of today's live stream. There's also a leaked lineup going out, which is the reported lineup for the match. So I will get that up as well. Someone said tough crap. Yeah, I agree. Erik Ten Hag, you've got to get on with it. You've got to give INEOS control. Your Anthony, your Mount recruitment hasn't been good enough as well. It's sad that Ten Hag will be sacked for Potter in the summer. There is this ultimate feeling that Ten Hag, whatever happens, Ten Hag's going to be sacked and Potter's going to come in, because there was a leak that went about and a report that came about that actually INEOS's plan is not to have managers, it's to have a head coach, and that Dan Dan Ashworth and co, they want to bring in to and Brailsford to establish the United way, the way they want to play, and then they're going to bring in players to do that and then bring in a coach to coach that, rather than like actually have a manager. And that Ten Hag is ultimately gone, but Ten Hag's going to get to the end of the season was this sort of big rumour going about, which I think isn't a good rumour to go about, but it's interesting to see sort of where that goes with that as well. As long as INEOS bring in good, competent people who know and understand the needs of the manager and the team collectively, spot on, AJ. The most important thing is that people that INEOS bring in, they understand the needs of the manager, they have the experience in recruitment, and they're able to oversee recruitment. If it's John Murtough and Richard Arnold being given all the power over Ten Hag, I'm like, what? But if it's someone like Paul Mitchell and Dan Ashworth and they understand what the manager wants and needs, then 100% I agree with you on that as well. The club and manager treated Johnny disgracefully. He's better off moving on. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think it wasn't good what happened with Donny, and I think I'm glad he's moving on as well. Ten Hag is not the man for. Ten Hag is not for Manchester United. I think he is. I think he can be. I think there's a good manager in Ten Hag. We've seen that at Ajax. I think we've seen coming in third season, third place at trophy. I don't think Ten Hag's a bad manager. I just think he's stubborn, and sometimes you can't be stubborn in the Premier League. There's a few things he needs to change. I think he's on a learning curve. His man management needs to improve, and I'm willing to give him to the end of the season. I'm willing to give him a bit of time because we know that we've had so many problems with the people above Ten Hag, the board and the players, that ultimately I don't think the biggest problem at this club is the manager. If you sack Ten Hag and we don't change anything else, I think we'll be sacking another manager in 2 years and another manager in 2 years and another manager in 2 years. I'm at the point where Ten Hag might not be good enough, but let's actually change the club. Let's change the structure. Let's change the players. Let's give him to the end of the season, because if you sack him now, do you know what I mean? That's sort of the way that I look at it as well. He had structure under Ajax, so it shouldn't be a problem for Ten Hag. And this is what I think. Ten Hag was so good at Ajax and did such a good job at Ajax because he had that structure, because he had that support around him with Overmars. And let's hope that that sort of comes to Manchester United. If Ten Hag sort of gets that structure and support at Manchester United, that sort of Overmars situation recreated, then I think it will look a lot better for United. That's sort of my hope, and I think that we know that he could work under a competent structure at Ajax. Obviously, managing in the Eredivisie and managing in the Premier League is different, particularly at United. You're under 10 times levels of pressure, but 100% agree. I think if he can get the right structure in place, I'd like to see what he does with actual proper recruitment rather than bringing in these sort of crap players. But I want to continue on because there is a few things that Ten Hag has said on INEOS, and there is still a few reports and information coming out on Ten Hag's wider plans, which I think will be quite interesting to get into. So going into the next story, what was sort of said on the takeover, the news, the plans, the information coming about. It was said, sources say Brailsford's idea is that the club should know its identity and then hire a sporting director and a manager who can work in total unison. So it looks like the plan right now. Brailsford's coming in. We know that he's a very experienced businessman. He's sort of looking at the club. He's trying to figure this identity of this club and then hire a sporting director and manager that can work in unison. And then the interesting thing is they say then hire a sporting director and manager, hire a manager. That is the big question mark, where it says there, they say hire a sporting director and manager. So there's a suggestion there, I think, from The Athletic, that if Ten Hag isn't willing to work with the sporting director, because we were just talking about how Ten Hag did that interview about how it's a must that he must have the final say on transfers and INEOS aren't going to give him that. I think this is The Athletic saying, if Ten Hag is very reluctant to give up control, which the feeling is that he is, then they will sack him and bring in a manager that's willing to work with the sporting director. And that is where Graham Potter comes from. This is 100% where Graham Potter comes from, because him and Dan Ashworth worked together at Brighton. I think INEOS look at Dan Ashworth, they look at Graham Potter, how well they worked together at Brighton, how successful it was, and they think, well, Ten Hag's reluctant to work with a sporting director. Ten Hag wants the final say on transfers, he wants the final say on this, he wants the final say on that. I think the way INEOS look at it and go, well, if Ten Hag does a good job at the end of the season, but he decides that he has to veto transfers and he does not want to work with the likes of Dan Ashworth, then we will sack Ten Hag and we will bring in Graham Potter, because we believe that Graham Potter is the guy to work with Dan Ashworth. I think that is sort of where INEOS are at with that information. I think that's sort of what INEOS are looking at. in regards to United, if I'm being honest as well. Unfortunately, Ten Hag's ego is too big for United. I think stubbornness is a big problem there as well. Liverpool fan here, Ten Hag's not a top manager, class manager, but he'll never be a top manager. Please keep him, says Liverpool fans. I just think that every manager should be given a bit more time in this day and age as well. If Werner gone to Spurs, we're going for Choupo-Moting or Girassi doesn't feel good. Hopefully not. I would rather Martial stay to the end of the season and waste funds on a striker that's not good enough as well. For me personally, Zidane is the best suitable manager out there for United. Zidane doesn't want to come to United. He's turned us down as well. And Dan Ashworth isn't leaving Newcastle. Stop dreaming, Alice. Well, look, I'm never saying that Dan Ashworth is leaving Newcastle, but the reports coming out that INEOS are willing to do what it takes to bring Dan Ashworth into United, are very determined to actually pay the money, and that there's a feeling that Dan Ashworth is open to leaving, and that's why Newcastle haven't commented or dispelled the rumours. I think, to leave the Newcastle project for Manchester United, the Saudi project, it would be quite surprising, because I think Newcastle's project, ultimately, I assume he would be given more control because the Glazers are still at United, but you just don't know. But the feeling is, to be honest, Ten Hag gets to the end of the season, and if Ten Hag does well, but he's not willing to work with whoever we bring in as a sporting director, they'll bring in a manager to work with the sporting director. The feeling is, as well, is that INEOS, I've said this 100 times, is that INEOS, rather than employing a manager, want to basically discover an identity, bring in a sporting director and recruitment people to sort of create this new United identity, this new United playing style, and then they bring in the manager as almost the least important role to work with it. It's almost like, rather than having a manager and building a team around a manager, INEOS want to build a United way and then bring in a head coach to do that. So that no matter who we sack, if we keep sacking managers, we'll just bring in another manager to do the same thing. So we've got this sort of way that we want to play. We've got the sporting director and this recruitment officer to do that, to get the players to play the way we want to play. And then we'll just need to find the right coach to work with the players, to work with the sort of team to do that, is sort of what INEOS's reported plan is. There was some interesting information coming out on Ten Hag's future. Big up Gaz in the chat as well. Big up everybody in the chat. Do smash the like button. Why would you leave the richest club in the world with the most promising project to go to your sinking ship? Well, that's what I did question, but you never know. You never know. We are United. I've always said I was quite surprised when we were first linked to Dan Ashworth. I said no chance he's leaving Newcastle, but then more and more reports have come out that Dan Ashworth would be open to leaving Newcastle. So you just don't know as well. INEOS won't be any different from clubs who are into puppet clubs. The one thing I'm going to say this on INEOS is, when I look at football, when I look at sort of stuff going on in the footballing world, Liverpool and Arsenal don't have the best owners, but Liverpool and Arsenal's owners put a right sort of footballing operations in place. They employed the right strategy and the right football operations in place. So Liverpool and Arsenal are in a lot better position than United. I don't think that Ratcliffe is the best owner. I don't think that the Glazers being here is the best ownership. But if they put the right structures in place, we could be where Liverpool and Arsenal are right now, not where we are right now. That's sort of the way I see it as well. Please keep hitting the likes. Big up people in the chat as well. The new Casado transfer kid rumoured to Manchester United, Bournemouth, Brighton. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll go to United, but I do know we're looking at him. But I don't think we'll go to United because United just don't like to pay the money and get the deal done. Continuing on into the news, it was said by Mike Keegan, in the meeting with Manchester United staff, Sir Jim Ratcliffe told staff his job was to address the performance gap and return Manchester United to the top of the world football. The reaction from those present was positive. Ratcliffe sort of laid out that his plan, his vision coming into United is to let's improve this performance gap. And Ratcliffe actually upset the Glazers doing this. And it's not really been spoken about by mainstream media, but the Glazers were frustrated with Ratcliffe's comments when he visited, because the Ratcliffe was apparently saying multiple times, this club is not where it needs to be. This club has not been good enough for 10 years, criticising the football operations, very saying this is not the United level, this is where we need to be, we're going to get you to this, we're going to make the changes to get you to this. Apparently that didn't go down well with the Glazers, but Ratcliffe comes in and says, I want to address the performance gap, I want to return Manchester United to where it needs to be. And the staff were very happy with that. But the big question mark, and some staff said this to The Athletic, and this was in Laurie Whitwell's other report, was we believe that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has good intentions, and we believe that what Sir Jim Ratcliffe wants to do will be successful. But the staff says we cannot get too excited because we're cautious about how he's going to work with the Glazers and how much control he'll be given, and will he be able to do the things he said he's going to do. The United staff who were listening to Ratcliffe's speech said that this was promising. He wants to do this, and he wants to do that. It was very, very promising. But they were saying they still are cautious that will the Glazers let him do that? There's these things that Ratcliffe said he wants to do, and they're like, brilliant, but will Joel? Will Abraham? And that was one of the big questions going about with that. Now, obviously, we've been talking about INEOS, Ten Hag. Will Ten Hag be sacked? this and that. We've been speaking about that a fair bit. And it has come out and said, and this was Erik Ten Hag saying, from my talks with INEOS, I had a fantastic feeling after it, how their personalities and ideas affect the process they want to go in. So I'm very positive about that, and I'm sure it'll be beneficial. So this was some interesting information that was said by Erik Ten Hag, because we've been talking about now, will Erik Ten Hag be willing to work with INEOS? Will the big problem be that Erik Ten Hag is not super keen on working with INEOS? That's been sort of the big question. But there's suggestions and reports from Ten Hag. Every time he speaks about INEOS, he's very positive about it. He's saying, the INEOS look great. I'm excited to work with them. They're excited to work with me. It's very positive. Ten Hag has been very, very positive about INEOS coming in, the news and reports of INEOS coming in, and obviously the changes that INEOS want to make. And I think ultimately that is very good. That is very positive news that Ten Hag seems very keen to work with INEOS. I think that is very positive. But I do think that Ten Hag, of course, is going to say positive things about INEOS. He's going to say positive things about the Glazers. He's going to say positive things about everyone. Ten Hag is coming out and being very positive about INEOS, and being very positive about the idea of working with INEOS, and saying, yeah, we've had a chat. We can't wait to work with each other. But there still is the feeling deep down. There still is that big feeling deep down that actually, are INEOS super keen on working with Ten Hag? Will INEOS be wanting to work with Ten Hag? That's sort of the feeling. That's sort of the ultimate feeling. And I think that's the big question mark. Will Ten Hag and INEOS work together? Will they work well together? It's why is Graham Potter having phone calls with Blanc? Why is Graham Potter being sounded out? Why has Graham Potter had conversations with those at INEOS about the potential of the United job? I guess it is because if Ten Hag continues the way he's going with Martinez and Casemiro returning and the results are still poor, that he'll ultimately be sacked. But it's interesting. How can anyone blame Erik Ten Hag when he has mediocre players? If he had the likes of Haaland and Mbappe and still losing, then definitely needs to be sacked. But he has McTominay in midfield. I agree. I think people forget that actually our players just really aren't that good. I think some people think our players are better than they are, and realise that actually if you look at some of our starting lineups, yes, we should have been beating the likes of Nottingham Forest, but a lot of the players in the starting lineup are not good enough for United and shouldn't be at United. And the only reason they're at Manchester United is because, one, we didn't clear them out in the summer, and two, the idiots that appointed and recruited them. But ultimately, I think the main criticism of Ten Hag has been more that he's picked the lineup, consistently picked McTominay, subbed Maino, brought on McTominay, which I understand to an extent, but why are we relying on an 18-year-old to change our midfield? Why are we relying? We're Manchester United. We shouldn't be, as good as Kobbie Mainoo is, we shouldn't be relying on an 18-year-old to change and transform our midfield. We shouldn't at all in the slightest. Continuing on as well, I want to speak about a few things as well. And the first thing I wanted to talk about, I put the wrong story in there. There's a story about Sancho, and I've added the Athletic story. To apologise about that. We will talk about that and Ten Hag and the players that he's got, and it's just not good enough that we're relying on Garnacho and Maino and Højlund, who are 18, 19, 20, to start week in, week out for us and be changing players because the rest of the club is not good enough. But one thing I want to speak about is Todibo. I want to talk about Todibo because he was rumoured to go to Tottenham. It kind of collapsed. Tottenham are going for Dragusin. Nice don't want to sell Todibo this month. And Manchester United don't want to sign anyone this month. And with Ratcliffe, INEOS, the connections to Nice, there is this feeling that Nice are kind of deliberately holding on to Todibo for United in the summer, I think. Now, it was said by Fabrice Hawkins, who's quite good when it comes to Ligue 1 news, that United, Chelsea and AC Milan are all monitoring a Jean-Claire Todibo. However, OG Nice hope to keep the defender this month. Now, I think what happens with Todibo is almost a massive statement from Ratcliffe. And the reason I'm saying this now is, Ratcliffe, you've got the power. You control Nice. You own Nice. If United want Todibo, would Nice sell him to a rival? Manchester United have got this big advantage here with Todibo. Obviously, there's a feeling that Ratcliffe might have to give up Nice and give up power because of the Champions League, Man United not being able to be in Europe, bish, bash, bosh. But ultimately, Man United want Todibo. And there's reports and suggestions going about that Jim Ratcliffe is holding on to Todibo so he goes to Manchester United, why he didn't go to Spurs. Nice obviously sort of in a title race, so they don't want to sell him anyway. Manchester United don't have plans to do investment in January unless money is raised, because one, FFP, and two, they just don't want to do investment in January because they haven't got a sporting director, a recruitment officer in place, and United almost reluctant to spend until they've got those appropriate people in place. But the interesting thing that is being said, and the interesting bit of information, is will Ratcliffe hold on to Todibo? Because I think that's a statement. If Ratcliffe is serious, he doesn't sell Todibo to Chelsea because they're offering $5 million more than United. He tells Chelsea to F off. He tells AC Milan to F off. He says no, Todibo is going to United. And Todibo wanted to go to United in the summer. So Ratcliffe, if he's serious, and I think it would be a big statement, he holds Todibo off till summer so he can go to United, because that's who United want. Todibo wants to move. Could be different with a different manager coming in, but ultimately, Lindelof is expected to be sold in the summer. Varane could walk just because out of his contract. Evans, will he stay? Man United will probably give him a 1-year extension. Maguire could also go. There's at least 2 centre-backs that are going to leave United in the summer. So we will need a centre-back. And Antonio Silva we love, but he's 70, 80 million. Diomande, 70, 80 million. Great players. Inacio, Branthwaite, more left centre-backs. Right centre-backs. Value for money, Todibo. That's what they'll be looking at. And I think it will be a statement from Ratcliffe if Manchester United can do something there as well. I think he worked around the CL rule being minority owner. I know Qatar found a way with PSG to work around the Champions League rule, so I'm assuming that Ratcliffe will find a way with Nice. I feel like there will be a way as well. That the RB clubs sort of found a way around it as well. The Glazers are going nowhere. They are good at making money, and Man United are profit asset making. Do you know what the biggest worrying and the biggest and most worrying thing about INEOS coming in for me is just about the fact that does this mean the Glazers will ever leave? And this is why I was upset about INEOS coming in, because it was about the full sale. It wasn't about INEOS. It wasn't about Qatar. It was about the full sale of United. And there is this ultimate feeling with INEOS coming in, will the full sale be guaranteed? Because it came out that just because Jim Ratcliffe bought 25% in United, there's no guarantee he'll be able to buy any more. There's no guarantee in the deal with Ratcliffe and the Glazers that he can buy any more than 25%. I'm assuming they've spoken about it, and I'm assuming Ratcliffe wouldn't just buy 25% and leave it there with letting Glazers forever rule United. I'm assuming Ratcliffe in the long term thinks he's going to get more than United, but the Glazers are like, this guy's going to be 80 by the time he gets to the club. So I don't know, do you know what I mean? But I assume there's something verbally in place with Ratcliffe and the Glazers, but there was never any written agreement or anything in the contract to suggest that Ratcliffe will own more than 25% of the club, which is very worrying, because I'm thinking, well, look, Ratcliffe's making some good changes to football operations. I like what Ratcliffe is planning to do, and that is great, and that's positive. He doesn't want to take dividends out of the club. He's planning to do this. He's investing his own money in the club. He's done more in 2 weeks than the Glazers have done in 17 years. He's actually going and visiting people, investing his own money, something the Glazers have never done in the club. Not interested in taking money out of the club, because INEOS bring in 10 times more revenue than United. So if he wants money, he can take out dividends in INEOS. And he's going and meeting the staff and saying, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. And that's brilliant. Paul Mitchell, Dan Ashcroft, brilliant if you can do that. But I think Ratcliffe's intentions are good, but the Glazers are still here. The Glazers are still at Manchester United. So while I believe Ratcliffe's intentions are good, there's always that, well, yeah, his intentions can be good, but Joel Glazer's still in that big chair. Yes, he's got football operations, but football operations also depends on the money available for football operations. And Joe and Avi Glazer are still in that big chair. Will he be able to do what he needs to do? Will United be able to run properly with these guys in the big chair? How does it work? And I think that is sort of the big question mark that I think is sort of going around for a lot of people as well. Please hit that like button, guys. We've got nearly 400 people watching. Let's see if we can hit 200 likes. So half of you hit that like button. We will hit the 200 like target as well. I do apologise if any lag is coming up as well. I look tired. Yeah, I think it's just the morning. I always look rough in my morning videos. If you watch my morning videos, you watch my evening videos, I have to be awake for at least like 4 hours before I look alive. Like I've been awake for 3 hours, but I look dead. So I do apologise. I'm just not a morning person. And Ratcliffe worth 22.3 billion, which is more than United as well. So people don't realise that. They don't think Ratcliffe is another dividends FC because he's worth a lot more than Manchester United. So he doesn't need to take money out of United. Now, continuing on, we're sort of getting towards the end of the live stream, and there's a few things and interesting bits of information that I do want to talk about. And this is more going into the Wigan game, the starting lineup versus Wigan, who's going to play, who's going to be involved. The reason I'm going live now and not later is, one, because there's lots of news, and two, I'll be doing a watch along later, and I didn't do a live stream yesterday. So I thought, well, I'll do a news live stream in the day. I do normally do short videos in the day and live streams in the evening, but when there's lots of news information, I do a 11:30 live stream, just getting the news and information out for you guys. And there's so much to talk about. We haven't even finished or gone through my PowerPoint as well. But let's sort of dive into the final thing, which is where we're going to talk about the Wigan game. Manchester United versus Wigan Athletic. A game we should win. A game I expect us to win as bad as we've been. But a game if we don't win will be embarrassing. And it was said on the Wigan game, it was said, did I skip that? I skipped that. Okay, yeah. This is also news quickly. We're waiting for Fenerbahce to make a move for Martial, but we don't know if that's going to happen. And PSV and Villarreal are interested in signing Police Street. I think I covered that yesterday. But going into the Wigan game, Erik Ten Hag spoke about Højlund, and he spoke about Martinez and Casemiro's return, and he said with Rasmus Højlund, he dropped out, but he'll be back for the Wigan game. Now, the interesting thing that Ten Hag said is that while Casemiro and Martinez are back, and Casemiro and Martinez are back in training, he's saying there's no guarantee that they're going to be fit for this game. There's no guarantee that they're going to be fit for that game. So while Casemiro and Martinez are back in training, this and that, Ten Hag is saying there's no big sort of guarantee that they're going to be back for the Spurs game. He's saying they will not be fit or ready for the Wigan game. They could be out for a couple of weeks. Now, could Ten Hag be playing mind games and Casemiro and Martinez are ready for the Spurs game, but he's going to act like they're not ready till the end of January, even though they're back in training as mind games, possibly? Or does Ten Hag want to risk throwing them back in a game as intense and big as Spurs? Because when we risked throwing Casemiro and Martinez back in too early last time, that's what ultimately got them injured and out for several months. It's one of the two scenarios, I think, with Casemiro and Martinez. But I want to dive into sort of what Manchester United's rumoured lineup is going to be today versus Wigan. Please do hit the like button, guys. We're so close to 200 likes, so really appreciate it. And please do subscribe down below if you're new. Sergio Ratcliffe is smarter than the Glazers. He isn't going to invest for free. Glazers have to sell off some of their shares to pay on this INEOS. I believe that will happen. What time is the watch along? I believe the match is at 8 o'clock, so I believe the watch along will be 15 minutes before kick. It's 8:15, so I'll be live from 8 o'clock tonight. I wasn't sure if I was going to do a watch along tonight or not because I've been tired at the moment and it's Wigan, but I probably will do a watch along because we've barely any games in January as well. But let's get into what Manchester United's starting lineup will be. And I do apologise if there's background noise. I do apologise if there's annoying noise. There's someone drilling outside. But what is Manchester United's lineup going to be versus Wigan, people? This is the big question. Manchester United versus Wigan starting lineup here. So, being the goalkeeper, Onana has stayed for this. I would play Bayindir, but the fact that Onana hasn't gone to AFCON says to me Onana's going to play. In my opinion, Bayindir's got to play. Even if, for me, Bayindir's got to play this. It's Wigan. For me, Bayindir's got to play. I have a feeling Onana's going to play. Right back is expected to be Wan-Bissaka, with Delo coming in at left back because United are reluctant to take the risk on Luke Shaw, although there's reports he should be back for the Tottenham game. Left centre back, despite Martinez being back in training, I believe it will be Johnny Evans. And despite all the things, Maguire expected back soon, I believe it will be Varane. I think this will be the United back four because this will have to be the United back four. I wouldn't be surprised if he did something like give Willie Kambala a go in here. Just because he's young, but I don't think he will take the risk. I think he just can't lose the Wigan. Now, I ultimately think that Maino will play, and hopefully Amrabat is sort of back from his injury, and I think it will be Amrabat, and I think it will be Bruno. I think that Manchester United might try this. I think Wigan's a good game for someone like Amrabat to get some minutes in his legs. Maino's been good. Bruno just plays every game. That's what they'll do. I think he'll play Garnacho on the right-hand side. Well, actually, I think he'll play Garnacho on the right-hand side, Rashford on the left, and Højlund up top. And the reason I think he's going to go strong is because we've only got one game a week at the moment, so he doesn't need to rotate as much. But I think Ahmad, again, could be in for a shout. This is what I think Ten Hag will do. I think he'll want to give Ahmad minutes. He'll want to give Willie minutes. I think if we go 3-0 up, you'll see people like Willie Kambala come on. You'll see people like Ahmad come on. And I think if we go 3-0 up, you'll see someone like Dan Gore come on. I think that it will be Bruno. It will be Maino. A part of me thinks it will probably be McTominay because Ten Hag's obsessed with him, or Eriksson. But ultimately, I do think that it might be this lineup. And then if we go 3-0 up, let's throw on Ahmad, let's throw on Dan Gore, let's throw on Willie Kambala. If we go a few goals up, give them a bit of experience as well. Because I think he's going to go strong, because I think he will be a bit worried. The results haven't been good enough lately, but I think he'll want to play the thing. The reason I think we're going to play a strong lineup is this. I'll show you this here. Is we've actually got to look at our fixture list is dead. Like we've got a game today, and then we don't play for 6 days. Yeah, and then we don't play for 2 weeks. After the Tottenham game, we don't have a game for 2 weeks. So the way I see it is we've got two games in the whole of January. Why rotate too much? And then we've got sort of a few games here. February gets a bit more interesting. But when we've got so little games in January, and then we've only really got one game a week in February, bar these 2 slots here where we're catching up. I just don't think, because we're out of Europe and we're out of the Carabao Cup, I don't think that he will be doing too much rotation from now on. I think he will like to go with what he believes is his strongest lineup, bar 1 or 2 rotations, because we don't have a lot of games coming up. That's sort of what I believe Ten Hag will do as well. Zidane will never join the Premier League. He doesn't bother to learn English. Zidane's rejected United in the past. People always talk about Zidane to United. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your breath. You're wasting the energy. Zidane will never come to Manchester United. You look tired, but still look lovely. Thanks. Carl said, be great to see Bendir. I really want to see Bendir in goal, but I don't think it's going to happen as well. Everybody knows he will play McTominay. It does feel like he will. And strong lineup is not even mid-table level. Yeah, it does feel like I ultimately think the Man United strongest lineup isn't even that good. I mean, I think if everyone's fit, our strongest lineup with Casemiro Martinez looks a lot better, but it looks like a maybe scrape top 4. We definitely need a lot of investment. But listen, people, I've been live for over 45 minutes here. Nice long live stream discussing all the news. I hope you enjoyed this live stream. We got through a lot of news, a lot of information in this live stream. I think it was a pretty good, pretty interactive live stream. So if you have not already, please do hit that like button. It really helps out the channel. I really appreciate it. If you are new and want to stay up to date with all the latest Manchester United news, transfer news, takeover news, and more, do subscribe. I go live every single evening. I do short videos in the day. I normally do a 10-minute roundup around 11 a.m. in the morning, summing up all the news, and then a live stream about 6 p.m. in the evening, discussing the news a bit longer. But if there's lots of news to get through, I'll do more live streams. And then occasionally I do late night videos that come out at like 11 p.m. on days where like it's breaking news or lots happening in the transfer window, particularly the summer window. I did almost 3 uploads a day. I would do a summary of all the transfer news in 10 minutes for you that would come out at 11 p.m. every night as well, or half 10 p.m. every night as well. So thank you guys for watching. Hit the likes on the way out. Subscribe if you're new. See you next time. Bye.